All right, you guys, we're live on here and we're live right here. We're gonna talk about sugar. So I'm just gonna explain to you guys like the biological effects. You can come out. I'm just gonna explain like what happens from the moment we take sugar in and then how it like goes through our body. You guys probably know the gist of it. So sugar, complex carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates kind of is like the realm that I'm gonna start off talking about. And so we ingest whatever we're eating, whether it's a cookie, whether it's pasta, it goes into our body and then it gets broken down into glucose. So that's the, you know, molecule that our body is actually able to utilize. So it gets broken down into glucose. And glucose is our primary fuel source, so we do need some form of glucose on a daily basis to just keep our energy up. We need a little bit for our brains and we need some for ourselves as well. So what happens is we have glucose and then insulin is released from the pancreas to help bring glucose into our cells. So glucose can't just enter a cell by itself. It kind of needs insulin to attach it to bring it in. Guys, that all makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, normal person, they eat whatever they eat, it breaks down into glucose, insulin rises a little bit, insulin helps that glucose go into the cells of the body to then be converted into energy, and then our blood sugar and our insulin levels drop back down, okay? So you're really looking for just like steady blood sugar throughout the day. Now, what is happening more often is that blood sugar is not balanced. So a lot of issues related to weight gain, a lot of issues related to chronic diseases is because our blood sugar is out of balance. And what happens now is we have a lot more sugar, we have a lot more hidden sugars. As a country, we're eating a lot more refined carbohydrates, you know, pastas, breads, that kind of thing, which isn't like a sweet sugar. You know, bread isn't necessarily like super sweet like a cookie is, but to our body, it's the same thing. It's still glucose. End product is glucose. So our body doesn't care if it's a cookie or a piece of bread, end product is the same. So now our blood sugar is spiking and more insulin has to be released to help bring this glucose into the cells or to help our body break down that glucose. So now you're having these insulin spikes. And the other side that's happening is that once our cells have taken in all the glucose they can take in, they're done. They can't take in anymore. So what happens to the excess glucose? It gets stored as fat. So glucose that can't go into a cell that the body doesn't need gets turned into glycogen and then gets stored as fat in fat cells. So oftentimes people that consume a lot of sugar actually have liver disease. They have, you know, non-alcoholic fatty liver, so their livers are actually fat because the first place that glycogen will go is to your liver. That's the first place glycogen goes to be stored. It's also the first place our body goes to when we actually need glycogen. When our cells are depleted of glucose and we actually need more energy, we'll pull from our glycogen stores and then we'll pull from our fat stores. So kind of getting off a tangent, but whatever, I always get on a tangent. You know, so when people are looking for fat loss, if you think about it, we have to deplete our glucose stores, then we have to deplete our glycogen stores, and then finally we get into those fat stores. So that's why fat loss is often so hard, is because we're constantly taking in glucose in one form or another. So I'll talk about it a little bit later, but to get to fat loss, not just weight loss, but to get to fat loss, we really have to be able to access the glycogen from our fat cells and then shrink our fat cells. We don't lose our fat cells, we just make them smaller. You guys with me so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so we know that once glucose can't get into the cell, gets stored as fat, that's an issue, leads to weight gain. Nobody likes that. So that whole effect then gets compounded oftentimes over time for people if it's not kind of regulated or put into check. And then what we see is something called insulin resistance. So that's kind of the precursor most of the time to type 2 diabetes. And what happens is the pancreas is still making insulin. So somebody that's type 1 they don't make insulin. Their pancreas doesn't even function. Now, somebody that's insulin resistant or somebody that has type 2 diabetes, they make insulin, but they don't make enough insulin to be able to capture all the glucose that they're consuming. So there's just not enough insulin being produced to handle the glucose. So now the glucose can't even get into the cell because it's insulin resistance. So instead of that glucose going into the cell like it's supposed to, the majority, if not all of that glucose, is being turned into glycogen and being stored as fat. So people that are insulin resistant store fat much faster because that's the only way that glucose can be utilized by the body, okay? And then the problem with that is you have enough insulin resistance, it eventually turns into type 2 diabetes when somebody actually needs either to be put on medication or to be put on extra insulin to help bring that blood sugar level back down. So as you can see, sugar is a little bit of a problem for this country. You know, our obesity rate is up, our type 2 diabetes rate is up, all of that stuff. Staying on track. Okay, so what did we learn from our first talk about gut health? We talked about kind of a buzzword.
I'm glad you're asking me this question.
Inflammation. So
there's people watching out there. I'm watching for your questions here.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you. So we talked about inflammation. And we know that gluten is a big inflammatory, dairy is a big inflammatory, and sugar is a big inflammatory. So, you know, sugar essentially stresses the body. It puts our body into an inflammatory response, puts stress on the body, and oftentimes is why sugar is linked with so many chronic issues. I mean, we have cancer is a big one. I mean, cancer loves sugar. Like the number one thing to take out for cancer prevention is sugar. Because sugar just, it's like, you know how yeast needs sugar to just like go crazy to make bread? It's the exact same thing with cancer. It just loves sugar and will feed on it. So we talked about fatty liver disease. We talked about insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease. All of that has roots back to sugar because it's oftentimes creating that excess fat, and oftentimes it's that visceral fat that's around our organs, and that's the fat we really need to be concerned about because it puts pressure on our organs and we want to release that, okay? So I'm going to go to women and hormones and sugar. So obviously it has a big effect on men too and what sugar does to their bodies, but for women there's kind of this special interplay. So estrogen, our main hormone, is made in fat cells. So we do need fat. It's why women, we have a higher body fat percentage, because we do need that excess estrogen, progesterone, all of our female hormones to have babies and do everything that we do. Unfortunately, what happens is that once we have created excess fat from excess sugar, we now have excess estrogen. So it creates something called estrogen dominance. And that can lead to things like PCOS, which is polycystic ovary syndrome. It's one of the top causes of infertility in this country. You guys have all already had your children, so you're not too worried about that. But even if you have symptoms of like PMS and cramps, a lot of that has its roots back in being estrogen dominant. So really balancing blood sugar is not just to balance our energy throughout the day, but to balance our hormones throughout the day. So it's super important to have blood sugar balance so that our hormones are in balance. So sometimes those mood swings we have is because our blood sugar is out of whack and our hormones are out of whack and we don't know left from right.
And we just need chocolate.
And we just need chocolate.
Right.
But we really do need chocolate.
Right.
I'm actually going to talk about chocolate in a second.
Don't give me permission, please.
I actually thought about bringing in, it's the 100% dark chocolate bar for you guys to try with a little bit of or like no sugar added almond butter. And then things got crazy at our house. So if you can't guess the number one way to prevent insulin resistance and sugar overload, it's to balance your blood sugar. So, and I'm going to talk about sugar addiction in a second because it is a very real thing, and I think a lot of us actually struggle with it. And so let me segue actually into that, and then I'll talk about balancing blood sugar because they really do go together. So sugar isn't just something that like we really all love, it's actually addictive. So and you guys have probably heard this, they've done the scan of somebody on heroin and somebody on sugar. So heroin lights up one receptor, one neurotransmitter receptor. That's what it goes to, and it lights it up continually. You know, that's why an addict goes back for more and more, because they want that release, they want that high. Sugar lights all of them up. So it's firing everything in our brain, and so we want more and more and more. So it's not like, oh, I lack the willpower to not have another piece of chocolate, or I'm lacking the willpower to not grab that cookie. It really is almost an addictive obsession of once you have one, whatever it is, you want more. You know, so I definitely am somebody that is a sugar addict. Like it's all or nothing for me, you know? I sometimes, if I'm in the right environment, can isolate it, but more often than not, I would say like 98% of the time, if I go for one, it's game on. And I just go down a spiral, and then I get sick and I don't feel well. And it's like, I know that. We all know how we feel after going on a sugar binge, and we do it anyway. Like, it really is just that much of an addiction. So sometimes, like you would treat an addiction, sometimes abstinence is the best policy. When it comes to like sugar, this is what I'm talking about, like the cookies and the candy and the chocolate, you know, that kind of sugar that really lights up our brain. I think bread and pasta are very similar as well in that respect, though. They do kind of, you know, they're more of our simple sugars, so they hit us a little bit faster, send up those same neurotransmitters.
Can I ask a question about that? So when you're talking about that sugar and that addiction, don't you find that there's also a correlation with taking in sugar from like fruit, for example? Like, doesn't it trigger the same type, I mean, not the same, but it triggers a similar type of craving for that sweetness, for that?
It definitely can. And so I was going to talk a little bit about like kind of your low glycemic fruits versus your higher glycemic fruits. So like bananas, papayas, pineapples, melons, a lot of those are higher in sugar content than say like blackberries and strawberries and raspberries that have, I mean, they're still sweet, but there is like a little bit of that tartness to them. And they don't have the same effect on your blood sugar. So the effect that, I don't mean to demonize pineapple because they're great and they actually have a great enzyme in them, but you know, to just have pineapple, which is much sweeter, is going to spike your blood sugar much higher than say having blueberries or having raspberries. So your berries and your like sour green apples are much lower on the glycemic index than a lot of the other fruits. But fruit is another one that is still something to have in moderation and to kind of use as your treat.
Right.
So I think once fruit isn't an everyday thing or a twice, 3 times a day thing, it becomes a treat and it becomes sweeter to us. So instead of needing a Hershey's chocolate bar, sometimes just some berries and maybe some almond butter drizzled on top satisfies that craving and doesn't have the same impact on our blood sugar and our insulin that the Hershey's bar would have. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I have to give up my banana after my workout?
You don't have to. I'll just talk about it now. Kind of one of the tips to balancing blood sugar is when it comes to fruit or when it comes to really any carbohydrate, so whether we're talking about sweet potatoes, which is a great complex carbohydrate, or if we're talking about chocolate, or if we're talking about pasta, you always want to pair a carbohydrate with fat. So I would say to get, you know, the almond butter that is just almonds, that almond butter, and have a little of that on your banana would be much better than just having the banana on its own.
That's what I do.
Okay, perfect. Because the fat helps to keep the blood sugar and helps to keep the insulin spike a little bit at bay. So fruit is great to, after a workout, to help replenish our glycogen stores. But definitely, I would say half a banana, and then a little bit of almond butter or something like that.
Or mixed with avocado.
Or mixed with avocado and chia seeds and some cocoa powder
Yeah.
for a little pudding. Yeah. I
It
love
gets
cheese.
stuck in my teeth.
Oh, me too, but I don't even worry about it. Any other questions kind of on that realm? Just so you guys know, glycemic index is, there's glycemic index, there's glycemic load, and both of those are really created to help people that do have diabetes to help kind of see the impact that a certain food has on glucose and has on glucose and insulin.
Does your body respond to different types of sugar like differently, or like is your body gonna respond to like sugar or honey or maple syrup differently, or is it's all the same, right?
It's all the same.
So refined versus like natural.
It's all the same.
Okay.
So, is honey better than white table sugar in terms of the health benefits? Yes. You know, because it's not processed. If you get local honey, it can help with like allergies and things like that. But in terms of the effect it has on blood sugar and insulin, it's exactly the same. Yeah. Yeah. So it's really like, what is the sugar content? And that's the effect that it's going to have on your blood sugar. But I mean, a lot of people are like, well, honey's natural and it's good, and it is. But don't fool yourself into thinking that it doesn't have the same effect that putting sugar in your coffee is going to have. It's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the better alternative, but that effect is identical. Yeah. And Gina will hate me because I will talk about artificial sweeteners in a second. All right, so I'm going to go back to just balancing blood sugar. So if you're somebody, and honestly, a lot of people are out of balance with their blood sugar. So having a good breakfast is actually really, really important to stabilizing your blood sugar. Because if you wake up in the morning and say your blood sugar is at 90 or 85, which is a great, fasting blood sugar in the morning, or blood glucose level in the morning, and then you wait until like 11 to have breakfast, by that time Karen's like not shaking her head. By that time, your blood sugar has dropped even further. So then when you eat, your blood sugar has dropped so much, it's gonna spike up really high. So if you had eaten something when your blood sugar was at like 85, 90, it might go up, and obviously I'm gonna talk about what that breakfast should look like. It might go up to like 110, maybe 120, and it'll drop back down by lunchtime. So that's why we sometimes see like the spikes and the crashes, is when, we don't eat for a long time and our blood sugars drop so much, and then we have something that spikes so high.
What does it do to you, like physically or mentally, when it spikes? Like,
Well, I mean, think about when you give your kid like too much sugar and they go crazy, 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 and then they crash.
okay.
It's a very similar thing. I mean, not so much when you're talking about like having like an actual breakfast, but it's just, you'll spike up, you'll get like this boost of energy, and then kind of you'll dwindle a little bit. It's oftentimes why we see like the 3 p.m. crash too, is that kind of people's blood sugars aren't regulated to the point where they hit 3 o'clock and they feel level. They hit 3 o'clock and they feel this drop. So all meals really should contain protein and fat. Like those are kind of the 2 things you want in every single meal, because that's what's going to help balance blood sugar out the most. If you're going to have carbohydrates, obviously we want to shoot for complex carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, quinoa, legumes, those kind of things that have a little bit more like fiber, less of a sugar content. And I would say like breakfast and lunch is where to put those, and then really keep dinner as like veggies, protein, fat. And your dinner should be your smallest meal of the day. Lunch, you'll love this, lunch should be your biggest meal of the day, and then breakfast should kind of be somewhere in between. Because if you think about it, and we have it completely backwards, because most people in this country have dinner as their biggest meal of the day, and then they're up for 2 hours and then go to bed. So you want more of your food at the beginning because you need it. it. You need that energy. You don't need so much energy at night, and your body actually doesn't want to be digesting when it wants to be focusing on sleeping. So part of this is also to help with sleep and sleep state, which Gina posted about it today. Like, sleep hygiene is so important. I think sometimes if people just slept 8 to 9 hours, their health would completely change. You know, that's how important sleep is.
We need to live in Europe for that to happen.
Right? Maybe we should do a talk on
Yeah,
sleep
I miss
hygiene
siesta time.
Sorry, we're closed.
Okay, I talked about that. So there's a lot of schools of thought about this. But when you're trying to balance blood sugar, kind of there's this like 4 to 6 eating window. So you don't want to eat like every 2 to 3 hours, because that actually just all your body ends up doing is digesting, and it doesn't have time to go on to the other processes that your body needs to do. So if you eat every 4 to 6 hours, with 5 kind of being that sweet spot.
Such torture. I've been eating like every couple hours because that's what my body's used to now.
But if that's working for you and you
Yeah.
feel like your blood sugar is balanced, that
Yeah.
might actually be okay.
Okay.
With the 4 to 6, it's just your body has time to break down everything it needs to
Right.
do, go on to some other things, let that blood sugar and let that insulin come back down, and then you're kind of ready for the next meal.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and if you're eating the right things,
Right.
every 3 hours can be absolutely fine, especially if it's like proteins and fats, because you're not spiking your blood sugar.
Yeah. Like almond butter every hour. No, I'm kidding.
Are you?
Kind of.
Are you?
Not really.
You know, the only thing that has an effect on insulin and blood sugar are our carbohydrates. So, if, you know, and I posted about keto today, and I really do not want to talk about keto today, but one of the main things that keto does is it balances blood sugar because you're not having these crazy spikes with carbohydrates.
Because you eat fat all the time. And protein.
Yeah. But I mean, there's true benefits to having protein and fat. There are things that we need. We do, you know, some carbohydrates are okay, but it doesn't need to be the base of the pyramid that it has been for so long.
Yeah.
Come on through, say hi to the camera.
Oh.
Yeah. She's like, I'm just gonna jump down right now.
We'll be back.
She totally didn't duck there. I just watched her.
So, you know what? Since we are talking about sugar today, I will make the eggnog fudge recipe tomorrow.
What? What are we talking? What?
Yeah.
What?
So I've never made this fudge recipe before, but I have made different fudge recipes using the same method. There's no sugar. There's no sugar in it, and it's gonna taste delicious. Okay?
Is there dairy in it?
No.
What?
It's dairy free.
Call this eggnog then?
It gets better. It's dairy free, egg free, gluten free.
That's not
Eggs and sugar.
Air.
I'm pretty sure. You're like, is it water?
This is a farce.
Is it water with some cinnamon?
This is farce
So
fudge.
I will make it tomorrow, and then I will bring it in for you guys to try. How about that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, because I'll have to.
Yeah, that's
But
what
you're
it
like,
is.
I want to taste it perfect.
All right, I'm gonna go to Sprouts tonight, get some cauliflower, and get some collagen.
Yes, gluten free, Janet. All for you.
Gluten free. It's gluten free, I promise. And it has collagen in it. It's actually perfect. Is Gina watching right now?
No, she's
Okay.
not.
Okay, so she can't get mad at me in real time.
I'll get that for her because I love stevia too. In fact, it's in my tea right now.
So I'm not gonna say you don't have to have it, but I am just gonna talk about artificial sweeteners. Because they don't spike insulin. They don't spike our glucose, obviously, because there's no caloric whatever in it. But what it does do is it's still training our taste buds to want sweet. And so I think what's important to explore and to try is to have things without it. So, you know, I used to think that I could never not have coffee without stevia or some sugar-free syrup. I can taste it now. See, my taste buds have changed a little bit. But then I started to take it out, and I actually have started to put coconut cream into my coffee, and so there's actually that fat in there, and it's a little bit satiated. Coconut is a little bit sweeter naturally, and I find that actually really does it for me. So I think just challenge yourself maybe a little bit to see if taking stevia out of coffee, and just give it a week and see if your taste buds change.
You're trying to kill the last
I'm
sugar in my life.
I'm just saying try. I think there are,
It's just straight brown sugar in it.
like monk fruit, stevia, like they're great alternatives to have if you want to make a homemade treat. I'd much rather you use stevia or monk fruit than use real sugar,
Right.
But you're intentionally making
Killing
a
my baking business. Gee.
Hey, my wedding cake had full sugar in it, and it was delicious, and I loved it.
You need sugar to make real baked goods. I'm sorry.
But just try and see if your taste buds change a little bit with that. It does work, I swear.
What'd you put in your eggnog fake fudge?
There's no sugar in it.
What sweetener?
It's no sweetener. It's the vanilla.
It's not sweet. So you're telling me you're making eggnog fudge that's gluten-free, egg-free,
I haven't-
dairy-free, with no sweetness to it.
So I'll make two versions. I'll make my almond butter chocolate fudge that I know is really good,
Okay.
and I'll do this
That I can
eggnog
believe.
fudge, which I actually haven't tried yet.
Oh, okay.
I
So you haven't
haven't
tried
made
it.
it yet.
Okay, so this could be a total epic fail.
Yes, but
okay.
the person that did
All
the
right.
recipe, I trust almost with my life, even though I've never met her,
And they love it.
and they love it.
Okay.
So
I'm really excited for this.
we're gonna see, and I'll even do it live for you.
I think you need to do a live
You can-
tasting.
you can
I want to
live.
see your face. when you put it in your mouth.
You got it. But I have weird taste buds, obviously. Yeah, so that's my little thing on artificial sweeteners. I mean, you guys know, like Sweet and Low, freaking stay away from that. You're gonna get cancer. Truvia, stay away from that. Sugar alcohols. I did want to mention this. Like things like erythritol and xylitol. You can say hi to the camera,
Oh, no.
or you can duck down.
You can't duck down low enough, trust me. You're still going to be seen.
So those kind of sugar alcohols, I say it's 50-50 between people that have like a strong reaction of nausea to them, or just bloat also. So sugar alcohols can cause a lot of bloating as well, and constipation. So just be cautious with that. I did buy these bars. They're called No Cow. Hey Jack, if you want to sneak through that door, you can, or you can wave to the camera. He's like, I'm gonna go this way. They're called No Cow. They're just a protein bar, and they have 4 grams of sugar alcohols in them. And my body can kind of tolerate that, but I'm trying half of a bar at a time just because I don't want to deal with bloating. But anything that has 10 grams, 15 grams, sugar-free candy is all sugar alcohols, so there's still a caloric value to it. It's just not necessarily sugar, and it's not supposed to spike your insulin the same way that normal sugar would, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's super healthy for you either, okay? So just to be cautious of that. I don't know if anybody's ever had too much sugar-free chocolate or too many sugar-free jelly beans, but you can also get the runs from them. So it's just
Oh, I've heard of that.
you kind
Don't
of,
load up on that sugar-free
you kind of
stuff.
sacrifice one thing for the other. So just to be cautious that sugar-free whatever, look at the back and see if it's filled with sugar alcohols or not. Bye. Okay, do you guys have any questions?
Janet said shitstorm.
Shitstorm. Yeah, no sugar-free candy. No sugar-free candy, Janet.
Damn diabetes.
So I have a question.
Yes.
And I'm not sure it has anything to do with sugar. But I've noticed that when we have our normal workout here, and I leave here, and I'm sorry I do eat the whole banana, with my almond butter on my way to work, then I can usually get my shower, then I have my egg and my avocado, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
But when I cycle, and I leave here, and I have my banana and my almond butter, I get there, I shower, I have my egg and avocado, then I eat my lunch, and then
You're
because
starving.
I am ravenous.
Yeah.
why is there, what's the difference between the two? And what do you eat then if you're?
So I personally find that my calorie burn on cycle is like 200, if not 3, higher than my Kaya workouts.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're burning more calories
It's
at
the
5
cardio.
a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
So your body's definitely going to be hungrier. I would say either, kind of 2 options, I would bulk up your breakfast. So have a little bit more at breakfast time so you can stretch that window a little bit longer so that you don't then get into this like eating every 2 hours thing. And I think sometimes when we're eating every 2 hours, then we just start eating things we need to eat.
And
Yeah.
the donuts and
Out the jar.
I'm still ravenous
Right.
and
You know.
So I would say, how many eggs do you put into your thing?
I usually have 1 egg
1 egg?
and about a quarter of an avocado.
Okay, so I would actually probably do 2 standard, and then possibly 3 on cycle days.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Oh, I'm so excited.
More food! You guys, sometimes actually more food helps us lose weight. It's crazy,
It
but
is.
you need to rev that metabolism up. You know?
I was just kidding. I had 3 this morning. It was delicious.
Yeah.
I had 3 eggs this morning.
Oh.
And
Yeah, I
coffee
normally do like
and ham.
2 to 3 eggs. If it's medium, definitely 3 eggs. But even if it's a large egg, sometimes it's 3 too. So yeah. But yeah, just bump up the meal a little bit, and it should be able to hold you over. Try it tomorrow. Let me know how it works.
I have to go to the store and that bar with marshmallows. I'm not eating them. I'm not eating them.
I figured you weren't, but I just think it's funny.
Well, they have to build a tower and put a marshmallow on
Aw.
it. So.
I know you came late. Caitlin, do you have any questions on sugar?
For me, I mean, that's never like my vice. So it's a big, like, ooh, I must, like the saccharine sweet stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I just like food.
Is it more like, are you more of like the bread and pasta chip field, or are you just like whatever food is there?
You know, I think it's just like rich, yummy foods. I know
Okay.
dairy's probably like, and I know we
Yeah.
talk about that, but like, you know, the hard thing is like fruits, and maybe you covered this already. It's like, you know, oh god, if I have more banana, I'll cry, but it's just, I don't know.
You love bananas.
Huh?
You love eating bananas.
You know, I'd rather have a big piece of dark chocolate, to be honest, than a banana. I know that's like not productive, but it's
Have you tried like half an apple? Have you guys warmed up almond butter and put it on an apple?
Oh, no.
If you
Why
have
did you just say that?
Make nachos.
Like,
Why would
Because
I
I'll
not?
just eat more almond butter. Like I already eat a ton as it is.
But I said half of an
I'm
apple.
gonna eat half of my nutso jar before the end of the night now. No, I'm kidding.
I think it's a portion control thing.
A lot of this
Yeah.
is portion control.
Yeah.
Ding, ding,
Um,
ding. Yeah.
They're also, this is really good too. It's, you guys have to understand, like,
I haven't
I
had dinner yet.
Oh,
I
that's
do
not
like
good.
to have something sweet, so I have to find ways to like kind of satisfy that without making myself crave it more. Like I think that's really a key is how to satisfy it without craving it.
Okay.
So sometimes what I
Yeah, how do
do
you do that?
is half an apple, take like, you know, tablespoon of almond butter, mix it into coconut yogurt or almond milk yogurt or whatever. So you mix it up and then you literally can like dip your apple into it. My other, like my go-to probably trick for when I'm craving something really sweet, and Jamie turned me on to it, and I found a different version at Sprouts yesterday, is it's 100% dark chocolate. There is absolutely no sugar in it. It is super, super bitter, but you add like a little bit of almond butter, or I've really been into sunflower seed butter lately. You just put a little bit of that and it adds a little bit of sweetness and smoothness, and then you get that dark chocolate, or you get that chocolate, you know, satiated. Yeah, that word. But you don't want more because it's still a little bit bitter, so it's like it satisfies it, and then I'm like, yeah, I can't eat a bar of that because it's kind of like eating water. So that's probably one of my tricks, because I think what you posted last night to Gina. Hadn't I told you a little bit something about something like that? I like to think I want to take credit for it, but
well, I was going to ask if, you turned me onto the Kite Hill yogurt.
yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, and then I just smashed the berries in it, and then I'm just very into pomegranates right now, so I put pomegranates on top, and then I throw it in the freezer for like 15 minutes, so that it's a little harder.
I saw that.
Yeah,
That
so it
looks
gets
good.
more like ice cream.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would add to that? I mean, is it balanced
So what's
as far
nice-
as protein and fat?
So what's nice about the almond milk yogurt, and I think even it's really, really, really hard though to find the unsweetened coconut yogurt. So I go towards Kite Hill more
Kite Hill
because it's
Isn't that still pretty high in sugar though?
no.
No, if
Kite
you
Hill
get
is
it
none.
unsweetened.
It has none. None.
So the Kite Hill unsweetened plain
unsweetened plain.
has none. Yeah.
Alright.
But it does have, it's made from almonds, so it does have fat, which is great because you're then having your berries with a fat source.
Is it pretty good in protein?
It has minimal
Oh.
because it's almonds.
Okay. Yeah.
So what I've
So you
actually
can
done
add some
before
powder to it?
is you can add some, I've done like add some chocolate protein powder and mix that into it, and it's actually pretty good.
Okay.
So I think that's actually what I got onto is I did Kite Hill yogurt, chocolate protein powder, sometimes like chia seeds, and like made almost my chia seed pudding like that way. It's really good. Last night I used coconut milk, chia seeds, I did chocolate protein powder, and some cocoa nibs and mixed it together.
Those
and
cocoa
then
nibs are crackalicious.
Yeah.
Like so good.
and that was what I had for breakfast this morning.
I've done that in yogurt with diced chopped up pecans. Super
So
yummy.
I'm hearing the key is mixed yes, mixed chocolate protein powder with everything. So actually on this note, Remy actually did it the other day. She posted it under Gina's post, and I started to do it, which is to mix a little bit of chocolate protein powder in with coffee, and it literally makes it into kind of a mocha.
Yeah.
So I haven't been drinking coffee, but I do this Dandy one, which is kind of like a non-caffeinated coffee substitute.
It's not the mushroom stuff.
I've done it with the mushroom stuff too. I like the mushroom stuff.
Chocolate protein powder with mushroom.
It's a mushroom coffee mix.
Mushroom coffee.
But you mix it in there and it's like a warm mocha or like a warm cup of hot chocolate, but that has like no sugar in it.
Bridge cheese.
That's wonderful.
You don't knock it till you try it.
I've never spent so much time thinking about food and not eating it. Like,
Welcome to my whole life.
I don't know how you get out of bed. I mean, it's just
I get out of bed and I eat.
it's a minefield.
I like look forward to getting out of bed because I get to eat.
Oh, great.
You guys, I love food. Like that's why I do what I do. I just have had to renegotiate the way that I love food and what food I love.
See, I can't negotiate with the emotional terrorist inside me that wants all the food.
That is the challenge.
You can though.
I know.
You have to do this work and this work.
We do what
And
we've gotten rid of other stuff, you and I, so
Yeah.
we can do it.
I feel
Right?
like that should fix everything.
Oh, if only it was that easy.
I know. That
If
blows.
only it was that easy.
But this is.
But that's because that thing wasn't the actual problem. It was
booze. We're talking about booze.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody's wondering.
I'm sorry, I'm not giving that up. I'm just not.
Oh, you know what? I was going to talk about alcohol.
And how it relates to sugar, yeah.
I was
wondering.
gonna
Yeah,
talk
I was
about
talking
alcohol.
to you about that, yeah.
Hold on, somebody. Homemade chickpea blondies,
Oh, yeah.
peanut butter. Oh yeah.
Those are delicious.
Oh, yeah.
I've recreated those. Carol was the first one that brought them to
A brick party?
A brick party, and even Emma will mac those things down now. Mac them. Like she's like, these are I eat chickpea blondies
What's
all the time.
Carol? What's the sugar source in them though?
Honey
Honey. Okay.
or maple syrup.
Okay.
So pick a poison.
Sometimes. You just gotta
and
pick
and
ones.
chocolate.
And chocolate.
And you know, but you can get like the soy dairy-free chocolate,
Yeah.
which I've done before, which is really good. Or cocoa nibs, I've put that in there to make it even better.
So alcohol. I'm not gonna ruin alcohol. Well, I think I've already ruined alcohol for most people.
You're not ruining it for me.
Not ruined for me.
But there's kind of two sides to alcohol. One is that alcohol is a sugar, so it's going to work the same way in your body. The second thing, and probably the more dangerous side to alcohol, is that it lowers your inhibitions. So it's not just the sugar that's coming from the alcohol, it's that once you've had a drink or two, that dessert platter starts to look really good. Or the cheese platter starts to look really good.
Compromises all over the place.
That is a perfectly healthy activity. Okay, nothing wrong. Right?
Like this? I would
Oh,
say
no.
this.
I thought you were talking about something else.
That's a misdemeanor.
So that's the double-edged sword to alcohol, is that one is, yes, it is sugar. The second is that it oftentimes makes us reach for things that we wouldn't normally reach for. You know, pizza starts to look really good at 2 a.m. when you are hammered. Or Taco Bell.
Any of that nasty
Chocolate,
crap.
when I've had too much to drink, it's chocolate, and I've got to find it.
You're like 7-Eleven, here we go.
No, because that's the one thing, so in the years of doing this kaya, and all of us doing these bricks, and I'm clean eating, is cheap chocolate, cheap sweets are ruined forever.
Yeah.
So you have to get the high quality chocolate.
quality.
If I'm going to get the calories, it has to be really good.
Mary has taught us that if you're going to cheat, at least cheat well.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
so I mean,
Cheat up.
Cheat up, that's right.
cheat up. 'Cause every time I fall
I've
into
heard
that, I
that
really,
somewhere
really
else
want to eat
before.
something sweet, and I pick up that candy in the aisle, and I take one bite of it, and it's like, that was just horrible. It just wasn't
Waste
worth it.
if you're gonna waste your calories, make it on something good.
So I'm not giving up the alcohol. I'm taking everything else away from me.
Everything in moderation. Everything in moderation, you guys. Like that is literally the key to it.
Or all or nothing if you don't know what moderation is.
Yeah, but the all or nothing leads to the all or nothing. Like if you keep denying yourself whatever it is, eventually you're gonna go full blown into it.
Well, not necessarily. It depends on what we're talking about.
What are you talking about?
Alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Right.
That's kind of like a special.
That's a different category.
That's like a special subsection. Like
Right.
that can ruin people's lives.
Right.
If you're us, okay, not if you're normal people.
Right.
But
Damn normal people.
you know, if you really want chocolate and you keep denying yourself chocolate, eventually you're gonna go to the store and buy 10 Ghirardelli bars and just scarf them down.
Yeah.
You know? So sometimes having that, I call it swaps and substitutions. You know, like I want this, how can I make it a little better? Like I want pizza, okay, let's use cauliflower crust. Oh, by the way, guys, tomato sauce, be careful, a lot of hidden sugars in there. Sorry, just so you guys know. So always try and find like a low sugar tomato sauce.
Or
But-
ingredients. Right.
Yeah, or make your own.
Because
Because if you're Susie Homemaker, you can do that.
yeah, you just grow them too.
But you know, like there are ways
Sprouts and
to,
Whole Foods is for
like zoodles were probably one of the best inventions ever.
ever.
You know, like you can have your pasta and eat it too, right?
Literally.
So sometimes it's just looking for those things. You know, like you want fudge, but you can make Shannon's awesome no sugar fudge.
Or not. Or like you were teaching with like instead of potatoes, roast radishes.
Yeah,
I have become hella addicted to roasty radishes. They're super good, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
They seriously taste like potatoes.
They seriously do, and
They don't taste like
the
radish,
bite
because
out.
I don't really like
It
radish.
tastes
Yeah,
the spiciness out
like
when
the
you make them.
bitterness
It'll take
leaves a
that
little
away
bit.
probably, yeah.
Yeah,
And the spiciness, because I find radishes spicy,
spicy.
Yeah.
and they're not spicy when I cook them.
Yeah, the bitterness really disappears. I
Also,
forget.
you make them when you
Interesting.
put 'em-
I just cut them in half. Like I get, about that size, and I just chop them in half.
What do you like?
A roast. Okay, I'm really bad. I cook all of my stuff. I probably should use olive oil, but I have this issue with putting too much fat or
No,
calories.
do not roast in olive oil.
No, I know you said avocado, but I don't even do that. I use cooking spray. I spray all my veggies with cooking spray, and that's the only way
But why do all these recipes say to roast with olive oil if it goes rancid?
They're stupid.
Huh.
I don't know what
I.
they're
You
talking
heard it
about.
here, guys. They're stupid.
They're stupid.
Because a lot of times people that are chefs and that are in the culinary world, they're not trained to know this kind of side of things. Like they're not trained to understand that olive oil, when heated past its smoking temperature, becomes a trans fat. Pretty sure they don't teach you that at like.
But it doesn't become. Maybe saying that it becomes a trans fat versus saying it becomes rancid where it doesn't taste good. That's not true because it still tastes hella good. Like,
Yeah.
I've cooked with olive oil and it never tastes bad to me. Granted,
So
I'll
yeah,
eat
it
anything
changes.
that tastes that
The structure of the fat actually changes.
good. Right.
So it goes from being a great healthy fat into a harmful fat.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
you know. But I mean, that's why I have a job, you guys, is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we get to learn what's
So
true.
what's the whole thing about the coconut oil? Because I've heard both sides, that it's really bad for you, and that, oh, it's not the healthiest thing you could have.
So coconut oil is a good oil. So the study that came from, A, was taken out of context. B, was a Harvard professor that didn't know what the hell she was talking about.
And yeah, she's at Harvard.
What?
And yeah, she's at Harvard.
And she's at Harvard. So the thing with coconut oil is that it is high in saturated fat. And for a really, really, really long time, saturated fat, trans fat kind of got lumped together. And saturated fat, there's a subdivision. Wait, no, that's wrong. Rewind. So saturated fat got demonized a lot for cardiovascular health and being like one of the leading causes of heart disease. But that oftentimes was like the saturated fat from animal protein and animal fat, or from like kind of trans fats and margarine and
Processed
fats, yeah. So coconut oil is a very pure natural fat. So it gets lumped in with all of those and got demonized for a really long time just for being a saturated fat because of the other types of saturated fat there were and what those were doing to people's arteries and hearts and things like that. So saturated fat is not the devil. We actually do need some saturated fat in our diet. But should you throw a tablespoon of coconut oil in when you're sauteing your vegetables and a tablespoon here and a tablespoon here? No. Like you want some saturated fat, but you don't need a ton. And the other great thing about coconut oil is that it is high in medium chain triglycerides, which is super great for brain health and brain function, but it's actually good for weight loss. Coconut oil is an oil that helps supports our body's natural weight loss. So that's kind of where then like the overuse of coconut oil came from, is that people were like, oh, if I just eat coconut oil, I'm gonna lose fat. So everything is like, there are two sides to every story, and then it's kind of finding, okay, like what does the actual scientific evidence show? So 15 to 20 grams of saturated fat a day is fine. A little bit of coconut oil is great, but you also want a variety. You want your coconut oil, you want your avocado oil, you want your olive oil, maybe a little bit of flaxseed oil or flax seeds.
Canola?
So, no canola. No vegetable oil, no canola oil.
What's the Trader Joe's cookie spread made? Isn't that canola?
They have a canola, and they have a butter, and they have a coconut.
Oh, they have a coconut?
They do
Yeah.
have coconut.
It's pretty good.
Spray?
Yeah. True story.
But
Wait,
in like the two.
Trader Joe's.
No,
Costco.
Oh, I know from
The
Costco.
two,
No.
you know, the 2 for
Yeah.
1, or the, you know what I'm
I
talking
think it's
about.
like canola and olive oil, maybe.
That's what I use. That's bad. I think it's canola and
It's
maybe
just
even
not the
vegetable
best.
oil.
I like drenched it. Okay.
And I just would like, I was gonna say something. Did that answer the question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Coconut cooking spread. Maybe I should switch to that.
They oftentimes have like, sometimes I found it once, it was this liquid coconut oil. Like it stayed liquid instead of getting hard.
Oh, I found that.
And that was really easy for when I wanted to roast vegetables.
Yeah.
But I use avocado oil most of the time now, just because it's in liquid form.
They have
I just hate how many calories are in it. I have this issue with going because I'm a
So do you put your
cereal.
vegetables
My
on the tray
fitness
and then
bar.
drizzle?
Well, I have, but I've also done it in a bowl. But I hate doing it in a bowl because I have another dish to wash. I'm a lazy ass cook. I just tell you right now. I like shit easy, like hella easy. Like,
Couldn't you get one of those spray bottles? Don't they have those spray bottles that you can?
Yeah, they have the spray bottles that you
put
can
your
fill.
oil in and you just mist it like, but it's not.
Oh, that's a good
aerosol
idea.
can.
Yeah,
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I need to mist it.
Yeah, you just get one of those misting bottles
And then it's not the aerosol can, which
yeah, and then you're not.
You know,
putting
there's
other
other
chemicals in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have them.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my parents have one.
Santa.
Right?
My wish list. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I agree.
So
It's
when you
just-
talk about our sugar levels, right?
Yes.
So should we be testing our sugar levels or we just?
I don't think you have to go that far right now.
No, that's not fun to do.
No.
Really?
To prick your
I had,
finger.
Oh,
I had
you got prep.
gestational diabetes, and having to do that on a daily basis is
No
not
way.
I don't think I could do it.
Yeah.
I just have a thing.
I think you'll kind of, it's something that, I think sometimes a lot of this is just like learning to be aware of your body and getting a little bit more in tune with like, okay, where's my energy level at? Like, is it up, is it down? And kind of gauging that more as where your blood sugar is. But if you are eating balanced meals that focus on protein, fat, veggies, and a little bit of carbohydrates, you will naturally start to balance out that blood sugar.
Gina's on.
Gina's on. Hi, Gina! Don't watch minute like 45. Anything else, you guys?
Food is just ruined now.
It's
No,
not supposed to
I'm
be
teasing.
ruined.
So I had to be, so we went out to, I went out to dinner Sunday night and my mother always had this thing, if you went out, you always ordered dessert. It was just kind of a thing. And so in her memory, I always, if I go out to a nice, so dinner was over and everyone looked at me and I went, yeah, we're ordering dessert. And I was so disappointed because the dessert was horrible. I mean, it was just, I couldn't even eat it because it was horrible. It was like, how can I waste, you know? I took a, and everyone's looking at me, I'm like, I can't eat this. This is,
So what did we learn, Karen?
well, we learned that don't just order
Just
the
don't order
special.
the dessert. Just don't order the dessert. Just let it go.
No, Friday
It's not
night's
worth it.
dessert was so,
Oh.
maybe that was why,
Love it, I love
Sundays were
So
fun.
I went to dinner on Sunday night with my whole family because it was my mom and brother are 2 days apart or a day apart, whatever. And so we went out to dinner, and so 3 desserts were ordered. There was a lemon meringue pie, a pumpkin bread pudding, and like a apple rhubarb crisp or something. So you guys, I tasted all of them because it was my due diligence to taste all of them, right? And that's like a situation where like it's contained, and I'm not going to eat all 3 of them to myself
Right,
because that's
Because they're not all yours.
they're not all
You have to
mine,
share
and I'm
them.
around other
And
people.
people are watching.
Yeah, people are watching. I'm like,
Too many
all right.
witnesses.
If I was by myself now. And what I found is that the lemon meringue and the pumpkin bread pudding was way too sweet for me, and I was like, no, thank you. The apple crisp like had that tartness, and I took a bite, and I was like, oh, that's good. But like, I think sometimes we think we want sweet, sweet, sweet. It actually
But once
ends
you
up
get it
not-
out of your system,
You-
and then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
put it back in, you're like,
Tastes
what
really
the?
different.
Yeah, you're like, how did I eat that? Like caramel now, I can't do. It's just I'm like, it's clawingly sweet. So I think it's just you got to give your your body a
I don't
chance.
feel that way.
Well, you're a baker
But I get
too.
it, so I,
Yeah.
I
My
mean,
family eats dessert after lunch. Like that's how my grandma and my mom.
So does my daughter.
Lunch, there's dessert after lunch. Like I'm like,
Yeah, right now my daughter wakes up and is like, can I have my advent calendar chocolate at 6 in the morning?
Yeah, that's what I would be doing too.
Santa.
And then I'm trying to get my brother and my sisters.
That's why we started bet on the Lego advent calendar.
Yeah.
Or just you buy yourself 5 when you're an adult because you can.
Well, she has 2, so yeah. She talked me into it. Trader Joe's, they have the variation.
And they're only like $1.99.
Right, totally. Cheap.
Alright, I'm gonna stop this video just so that these people. Bye, you guys. Drop any questions you have below.